Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom.
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, Tim, and Bennett are here with John from Gritty Gear. John, how are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Not bad. Can you give us a little background on yourself and on Gritty Gear?
Sure. I born in Virginia and joined the Army as a medic. My father served as a medic in Vietnam, and my grandfather served as a paratrooper in Korea with the 82nd from 50 to 51. So did a few deployments, did some instructor time, did some advanced skills training, and got out. And upon getting out, just started to kind of evaluate what tools or resources were out there and what I really wanted to do afterwards. So during some of my time in my instructor billet, I just kind of got some insights into just seeing guys and girls going through, pre-deployment, workups and all the write-ups and everything. And just took some of the stuff that I gleaned from that and used those as templates to launch some provisional patents for some first aid bags. And that pretty much became the basis for the company. And we've been distributing and selling first aid equipment throughout the country that's basically helping first responders do their job a little bit more effectively. And we've crossed over into more of a civilian market where now we're interacting with, we call it concerned citizens, but basically it's people that are kind of that nature that are not likely to stand idly by when bad things are happening. And it's been a pretty educational and a lot of work.
So you mean like sheepdog type people?
Absolutely, man. The first responder community, I really think with the sheepdog concept, man, I love it. I think that it's so overdue, and I am so glad that somebody has got reins on that. The idea of the role of the first responder and the various roles that are kind of fall under that umbrella, as well as incorporating, the veteran community in terms of seeing how, especially with Gritty Gear, I mean, all of our guys, served as medics or currently working as medics, and they all are still giving back to the community. And a lot of that is through service, And I absolutely love it, man. I love the sheepdog thing. I think it's fantastic. I fully endorse and support it, and I think it just needs to stay, or hopefully grow. I'd love to see it grow.
Yeah, and just for a little background for the audience, John and I met at SHOT Show out in Vegas. What was it, February? And
yes, sir.
So I was at the Sheepdog Impact Assistance booth, talking about the nonprofit Sheepdog. And John came by and we hit it off, started talking, and, decided hey, this is great. We'll continue the conversation later. And so all these months later, John reaches out to me and, hey, remember me? And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. And so that's how we kind of met, was because of Sheepdog. But we met at the SHOT Show, which if you haven't been to SHOT Show, you got to go. Figure out a reason, figure out a way to get in. But that's a freaking awesome experience if you like guns and
I'm pretty sure
stuff.
SHOT Show most of the time turns into a shit show, but
well, yeah,
just saying.
Yeah, it can. It's entirely possible, but
it'll keep. Yeah.
I mean, I laugh because I talk to a lot of people that have been out. I've never been out there, actually, and at someday I'll have to go. But I always talk to buddies that have been out there, like show me pictures, and yeah, it turns into a shit show for the most part. So.
Yeah. Well, Nick Cumulasso is from the Raider Project. I had known him from when we were at 3rd Recon together back in like 06 to 09. And I didn't know where he was. I just lost touch, had no idea whether he was still in, whether he was out, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, I start hearing about this Raider Project thing, and then I start hearing his name attached to it. And so SHOT Show a year and a half ago, I hear that he's there at SHOT Show with Raider Project doing his thing. And so that's how I got linked back up with Nick again, was through SHOT Show because
Right.
of all the
and
media
not,
that was
and
coming
not knowing that he was literally like
He's
right,
he's
right
the
down
director.
but right down the road from you too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, he's right down the street.
So,
But lots of good stuff going on at SHOT Show. Yeah, John. So tell us, when did you come up with the idea for Gritty Gear? When did that whole concept start to take form for you?
Well, it was, it truthfully, it wasn't a singular moment. I'll tell you, it started with actually a concept for a bag, that a tool that wasn't available or didn't exist. And I had an experience on a deployment where it was, I'll call it highly educational, and we'll just leave it like that. You know what I'm saying? So, and I could have, I could have really used a different piece of, or something else could have helped me do the job better. But I didn't really think about it to the point. I didn't come to a solution or anything. But when I was working, I was billeted as a combat medic advanced skills instructor for, I did about 2 years. And I just kept seeing like these same problems, right? These same snags, and and kind of on a larger scale, they probably, you would have overlooked them, but just by nature of the position, not really any, no profound, capability or anything. But I'm just sitting there and I'm watching this guy and he's having this problem. And then I'm watching this guy and he's having the same problem. And then I'm watching this girl and she's having the same problem. And all of them are preventable in, management. So what ended up happening was I got some money together. I think I had like $35 in materials from like one of these fabric stores that they have stateside. Like, I don't know what they're called. I don't remember their names. And I went to a pawn shop and I bought a sewing machine, and I made the first run of the Boston bag, which is a chest rig it's designed for an active shooter or highly dynamic medical environment, but so the medics don't have to drop their aid bags and attempt to recover the materials out of the bags and all this. And it was going on, and I'm like, these guys are trying to work out of trucks, and they've got big stop bags, and we're like, especially when you're talking about like react to contact scenarios or where you're not in a controlled environment. And that's what it really came from, I think, is just the straight up head beater, going through thousands of hours of training and just seeing like, okay, this is something that needs a solution, and we need better outcomes. And at that time, I think that was like maybe 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. And things were still very kinetic, very dynamic. So we were pushing a lot of people through. And just somewhere after that, I think once I actually put it together, I took it and I showed it to a Vietnam veteran. And it just kind of, he was like, you got to do something with that. He's like, you can't keep that to yourself, So, and that's kind of where it started,
Yeah, and just so people can kind of follow along as we're talking here, your website is grittygear-medical.com or grittygear-medical.com. And
yes, sir.
So go on there and check it out. I'm looking at the Boston bag right now. It's pretty cool. It kind of just, you just sling it over your shoulder or whatever, and it just lays open. Just everything right there.
It's so, well, the thing is that, you look at it and you're like, well, that's oversimplified. But the fact of the matter is that once we started running that through on the ranges and, we're dealing with, teaching TC3, I mean, we're teaching tactical combat casualty care. And that program has taken the world by storm. And if you are paying attention to CNN and you're seeing just the horrific things that we're dealing with, having these medical skills at this point is almost like it's kind of like a fundamental skill set. You have to have a little bit of bleeding control or, not just your situational awareness. But that bag, it's registered, it's a patent pending status. And the way that it is it now more than ever, it's designed to basically be taken out of a patrol car or, an actively responding unit and treat multiple casualties with immediately life-threatening and, hopefully life-preserving techniques expeditiously, but also keeping the medic in a position where he's not digging around in a bag. He doesn't have to take it off. Should you get re-engaged and you've got to recover your gear, then you've got to go back out and get exposed again to, more life threats. And then, we're looking at losing another medic. So and it's, if you look closely, it's actually got dual release buckles on there, so you can actually break contact. If you were to get hemmed up with that, you have two means to actually just drop it if you need to. Or I know that some of the civilian medics have expressed concerns regarding like combative patients or mental status. So that's a way of avoiding and negating having that pack strap. But we've sold a lot of them. It was featured in Chief of Police magazine in a response to, I think, mass casualty. I'm not sure which issue it was, but it's, hoping some guys have used it and they've gotten back to us and let us know that, hey, we were able to, give a little bit of help. We've had a few people, respond to different scenarios, and you don't always get the best outcomes, but on that medic side, you just don't, get to choose the outcome. You just get to choose your action or your intervention. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. So tell us, where can we find you on Facebook also?
Gritty Gear Medical is our Facebook, and then that's really easy to just get back. And there's also Gerard just stood up our Instagram also within like the last 3 months or so, and that's been really good. He's been reaching out through a lot of different agencies, a lot of the veteran business network. So with him starting the Instagram, that's really helped with redirecting traffic and just kind of those channels. Everything's so connected, and it's just like, it starts, it's a small thing. It doesn't, it's not a huge resource investment, which I think for the entrepreneur is always a major concern is, allocation of resources, but you can get so much done with it. So he's really been pushing the social media piece, and he's been doing a great job on it. So we're lucky to have him.
Very cool. So tell us some more about, you mentioned Gerard. Tell us about some of the other Gritty Gear team members. Who have you got on the team, and how did you bring them aboard, and their backgrounds, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'd love to. So right now, there's a roster of 5 guys. We've got more people in the background, and we've had a lot more with the distributor relationships that are developing. And it's kind of like, okay, where and when and how is the best application of this guy and his skills to facilitate organizational objectives? And the truth of the matter is that they're all really talented people, and they're all highly involved. I mean, they're just not the kind of people that you're going to find sitting on the couch. And that means that some of them are deployed. Some of them are primarily like, we've got a guy right now going into his second year of medical school. His name is Donald Gigi. Awesome guy. He's at Marshall Medical School. He was a combat medic in the Army. He did a few tours overseas. He became a paramedic, and then and during that time is when he was working as a paramedic and put himself through his undergrad, working as a medic, got into Marshall, and now he's, I think, going to be starting his second year here relatively soon. I think he's getting just a little bit of a break. So this guy's juggling med school, everything that goes with that, and then he's still, where he's really coming in right now is his primary contributions are. I mean, this guy's not just his deployment experience or his time, that he spent in the rigs or out on the street working, but bringing things in terms of how are we going to further integrate into the community, right, into the EMS side versus is this best to direct this towards law enforcement, and he's a super sharp guy, and I'm very glad that we've been able to continue to work together. He was also a combat medic advanced skills instructor, and that's where I met him, which I think was after his first tour, but I believe before his second tour. And I just really, valued, be, know, and do kind of guy. And that's exactly who I want, and who the team needs. We need people that are able to not just sell you snake oil because it's not snake oil. And these things are important. And I need you to be able to demonstrate your proficiencies and explain this to people. And I need you to be able to relate to people. And he just hit every single one of those things. So I'm really glad that Don's there. And I think it's awesome that, anytime you got an enlisted medic making his way up and working his way up, and the guy's going to come out an MD, I think that's quite an accomplishment. I can't wait to see him at his graduation.
Nice.
So yeah, man, it's great. And we've also got Daniel, and Dan, I'm not going to say his last name just because he's a family guy, but Dan was initially a student of mine, and the guy came through the course, and he was just absolutely, unquestionably highly proficient, but also super professional, and he was really experienced. I think by the time I met him, he already had 4 deployments as a combat medic. Might have even been 5 at that point. And he was, as a non-commissioned officer, the guy absolutely provided an appropriate, like highly needed role for the teams that he was working with, and I was just really impressed with him. And so I stayed in touch with him, I think through his next deployment. And it wasn't too much longer after that he was actually medically retired from the Army. And so he's got all this experience, it's unbelievable the amount of time and the selflessness of this guy, And so he came back and we just stayed in touch, and we became friends. And when I was getting this thing together, I was like, if there was one guy that I was going to call to, so I called Dan. And we've been working on it, and Dan is going to be taking all of Texas and possibly central North America, central region. So moving forward with a guy like that, you take somebody that has that much knowledge, training, and direct experience. That's a force multiplier of a degree that you're just not going to get, from another resource. What that guy brings to the table in terms of the team is. He is a highly experienced, world-class, incredibly proven trauma provider, under combat conditions and, austere conditions globally. And so having a guy like that, when you got to go out and run a range or, go talk to some people about how significant these endeavors are that we're partaking, if we're trying to sell a police department, units, and, it's not just motivated out of, like a profit incentive. It's like, hey, in your place in this, county, you guys have had, X number of violent incidences in this much time that produced these degrees of injuries. Here's tools to help you guys go out there and in your role as that first responder, save some more lives. And Daniel's, you can't question his track record. It's like he's put his, neck on the line time and time and time again. And he did all of that while raising a family, being a responsible father. He's incredibly integrity driven guy. And he's also a great dude. He's just a great guy. So we got Dan on the team, and I'm very thankful that he's there. And we have Chris, and Chris Ramirez is actually working. This guy. So I met Chris when he was a CMAS instructor as well. And he, I think, already had been there for a year by the time I got there. And I remember he just kind of right off the bat struck me, as a little bit different, and I wasn't sure what it was. And after I spent some time with him, he's readily, approachable, but he does keep some of his business to himself. But you got incredible deployment experiences. And I'm not going to say that they were all necessarily good, but the guy was out there, combat jump, all that. And Chris is so vested, and hopefully within the next 2 years, he's going to be in med school. So he's going to be an enlisted medic, multiple tours overseas, highly decorated guy that's worked his way up out of the ranks and is hopefully going to be out there. And, he has big goals. I don't want to get too much into his own, but the stuff that he's looking at doing in terms of when he does graduate from medical school, what his goals are and how that integrates back into the veteran community, and not just the veteran, but the veterans' families, dependents, etc. And it's fantastic stuff. So these guys are just highly, highly dynamic, non-linear thinking types, which brings me to Gerard. And Gerard is actually just the newest guy on the team at this point, but he's really been doing a lot of good things for a lot of people for a really long time. So he's exceptional. He's functioned as a paramedic and as a firefighter and as a police officer, and he did a few tours overseas as well. Fellow paratrooper. And he's a great guy, and he's been really bringing some social media management to the Gritty Gear team that we needed. And we weren't doing it right before. And everything's still in a developmental process in terms of there's no cookie cutter solutions. Like, everybody on that team is capable of independent thought and executing and accomplishing an objective with minimal directive. And that's how I need them to be. And, Gerard's really taken on, especially with my current deployment, a lot of responsibilities for the company, and they're considerable. So he's really stepped into, a great role. He's doing great stuff in terms of getting the word out and laying a foundation for kind of informational exchange. And that's all helping facilitate the further movement of the company. So it's almost, just very truthfully, like, I don't need 10 guys. The team doesn't need 20 guys or 30 guys, because we've got, with these kind of guys, they're all capable of so much. And when you give these type of people empower them to enact, like, hey man, go out there, go make it happen. It's just the desired end state is this, how you get there is your business. These are exactly the kind of people that can do that. You know what I mean? I mean, these are exactly those guys. So when people, think that, in terms of there's always, in terms of leadership positions, or, who's doing what and what hat do you wear today versus what hat might you have to wear tomorrow. It's like, well, you could be doing inventory controls and ordering and purchasing today, and then tomorrow you could be out on a range as the senior, primary instructor, and then you could actually be back doing corporate sales or trying to get a corporate account the next day. So, and these guys are all regionally identified. So it's a distributed network, and it's working effectively, even with geographic challenges, time challenges, and all these guys are able to do it. And I don't know. I'm really glad that they're all there.
Yeah, that's one of the things in entrepreneurship in general. We talk about it all the time. I wish I had one of these guys instead of 10 of those. That's an independent thinker and it's got some self-motivation and all that sort of thing, because you can't teach that. Those are skill. You hire those kind of skills, and you can teach the hard skill, but it's the soft skills and the independent thinking and the ability to just reach down inside yourself and have some drive that you just can't teach. That's got to already be resident in a person. So that's
yeah, man.
Great that you got a team like that.
I just came back. I apologize. I had to chase my dog around outside. This is the stuff that happens when you work at home. So I've got a ton of people that I want to get you in touch with, John.
Okay.
And not only that, but expanding on the whole Army side, but going to the Navy side as well. So corpsmen, and we've got another set of guys. If you've ever heard of, they're both Marine Corps veterans, but they have this company called Crow's Warrior Salve. And they, man, it's some of the best stuff I ever found for like wound treatment, like after treatment. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So those are some guys I'd like to put you in touch with as well. And then a bunch of my own buddies that were either, corpsmen or medics as well, just to kind of expand your network if that's something that you're looking to do, because you never know. And some of them are law enforcement guys now. Some of them are first responders in their own right. And it's always good. These are the people you're looking to connect with. So I would enjoy to at least get you guys hooked up and see what happens. You never know.
Yeah, I think that's great, man. Absolutely. You never know where those doors get opened, and those things are, the networking piece is huge. And that's something that I've really had to kind of embrace, because just, coming from, the prior service, type environment, you kind of walk into some of these situations and there's this expectation or this idea of this standardized accountability and integrity, that you're dealing with these known entities that are going to operate under value-based principles that correlate with your own. And you just get out there in the world, man, and it's a different story. So anytime you got like-minded individuals that are working together to further a mutual objective, then sign me up. You know what I mean? I
do.
Yeah, I was really interested as you were describing your team. Don, I think, is the one that's in medical school.
Yes,
is that
sir.
Right? Yeah. So
Yes, sir.
Bennett and I, as you probably know already, in addition to working on Cigars and Sea Stories, we also have a nonprofit called Warrior Hall. And one of the things that we had wanted to do with Warrior Hall early on, when we had all these grand ideas, before we realized that you can only do one at a time.
Yeah.
And, so we had to kind of take it down to bite-sized pieces and focus on certain things. But one of those ideas was basically to make an impact in the mental health community for the veteran community by creating a pipeline, if you will, for those with combat experience to get into the clinical mental health world. So, we started off with the concept, this was Bennett's original idea, was peer support for combat veterans. And so what we, as a peer support specialist, you're sort of on the fringes of mental health. You're not a mental health professional, but you work with them and you refer people to them and that sort of thing. And peer support programs are overseen by them. But what we thought was, well, let's take it to the next level and let's say, well, let's get a guy who really gets into that role as a peer support specialist. He's a combat veteran, but now he wants to take his education further and become a clinician, a licensed clinical social worker or a psychiatrist or whatever. And, why don't we kind of incorporate that into Warrior Hall as a program, to enable that guy who's, probably closer to the middle of his life than the beginning, might have a family with kids at home, it might be set somewhere, owning a home or whatever. And it's not easy for somebody like that to pick up and just go to medical school,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's all, there's all the challenges, so we would try to remove some of those barriers and challenges for that guy. And, what your friend Don is doing, he's obviously going the medical route rather than the mental health route, but it's very similar. And I just think, there might be some synergy there, to, be able to speak with somebody like him about his experience and, to help us move Warrior Hall in that direction, to get that program set. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I certainly support the idea. I think it's a fantastic idea, because I can't speak for Don, and it would be unfair for me to. I can't speak to, like how he would work or what he could or if he can. So I can get you in touch with him. I think in terms of that concept, though, introducing the combat veteran as the peer support specialist to guys that are dealing with issues that are related to, post-deployment combat stress or whatever it is they're looking at. I think the value of having a fellow veteran in those situations is absolutely essential if you're really talking about establishing some really good, boundaries related to, accountability, trust, mutual shared experience, which sometimes doesn't really cross the that threshold with maybe a civilian mental health provider that hasn't experienced those kind of conditions. And I think that if there's going to be something done to help pursue that, then of course whatever I can do to help it, I'd be glad to. From what I'm aware of, speaking with some of the guys at the VA, there was limited discussion of starting to incorporate Navy corpsmen and Army medics as clinical providers at the VA clinics, which I thought was fantastic. So what they were trying to do is figure out a role for some of these guys that maybe don't have very high-end medical certifications, and some of them do, especially with continuing education and the fantastic, GI Bill resource, which, God bless everybody that got that lined up for us in terms of the sacrifices that they made. But I tell you, the idea of having these, and not necessarily just medics, but, military personnel with authentic shared experience to help facilitate good clinical outcomes. I think, it's like, what do we got to do to make that happen? What guy or girl or what number of them can we help get a better outcome for by having that present, and it's real, and it's not mission impossible. You know what I mean? It's just not mission impossible. It's so doable. But dealing with some of these agencies, you just understanding that, like, you want to cross the Rubicon and walk through that door, like the administrative process, is considerable, but there's got to be ways,
Yeah. If you look at one of the biggest complaints of veterans seeking counseling or mental health care, probably, the words are on the tip of your tongue already. It's that they don't get me, because they didn't serve, so you're talking to some guy in a white lab coat, who's
right.
a civilian who, he had to take a class to learn how to speak militaries, and they literally do have those classes, but then you got, in all fairness, you got people like Bennett who, he works for the VA. He is a peer support specialist for the VA. But you got the vast majority of their clinicians and folks like that who are not veterans. And, that's why Bennett came up with the idea for Warrior Hall, was to kind of bridge the gap and enable, just kind of remove that stigma and the barrier, for guys who are looking for somebody just to talk and share their experiences with,
Yes.
and then get connected with the professional care that they need, but do it in such a way that's respectful of their service and their unique military experience, that civilians just don't get, and they never will. You can't teach it to them, and you can't hold it against somebody that they don't have that experience. But it's a fact that they don't, and it's a fact that they really, never will truly understand. But it doesn't mean they can't help us. And so if I can, because of my status as a veteran, if I can talk to another veteran who needs that civilian's help and convince him to go sit down with that civilian and get that professional help, then that's a good day. That's a good day at the office. But
there's just such a disconnect at the VA, unfortunately. They need more of an integrated health team concept. I mean, they're trying, you know what I mean? But especially with the mental health side, psychiatrists are in their own little world on one side. Then you've got social workers and mental health counselors and psychologists are in their own little, world too. And then the medical side is all kind of in their own little world as well. So it's the integrative part of that I think what's happening now is that you've got peer support guys that are really starting to bridge that gap and force the VA to kind of see it as a more whole health system than just, you've got our little fiefdoms all over, and it's really detrimental because all psychiatrists want to do, frankly, is issue freaking drugs. That's what they do. That's their avenue of treatment. Counseling isn't really part of that. That's what psychologists are for. So at the end of the day, you've got to have either a licensed clinical social worker, mental health counselor, or a clinical psychologist working hand in hand with a psychiatrist. You know what I'm saying? Or at least at minimum a psychiatric nurse practitioner. That's one of the things that I'm finding is working pretty cool too. Or PAs that get it, You've got a lot of PAs that are vets, and a lot of nurse practitioners that are vets as well. So it's in trying to find that sweet spot to integrate all that stuff with the actual medical doctors that are, treating the body. But you've got to get everybody involved in treating the mind and body and spirit together, period. So.
That's a holistic model, and that is absolutely not what a Western trained physician is trained to do at all. I mean, he's looking at a medical model, and just to get back what Tim was saying, there is absolutely no collective shared experience that's going to help him interact. He's empathetic, and yes, he's professional, but sometimes that might not help. I realize, Bennett, with what you're saying, you're really talking about quality improvement processes in the VA, but because you are in such a key position with your job, and I'm sure you're in direct contact with people regularly that definitely need care and whose life you're positively impacting. Do you recommend, or are you aware of the vet centers that are popping up across the states, and do you encourage participation in them?
The VA vet centers? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. I think that they have their place, for sure. Especially, but once again, it's a slippery slope with that, because if you are just getting, if you just need mental health care, not a bad place to start. You know what I mean? Counseling and whatnot. The problem you run into is that if we're talking about a holistic model, they're not part of it, because the only thing that can be integrated there, because they have more leeway, because they are part of the veteran, the Veterans Administration as a whole, but they're more of an independent side of it.
I think a draw for some guys that I've talked to is
correct. Which is huge. It's just a matter of having, just like any other thing, you're going to have good ones and you're going to have bad ones. And I think if you have good ones, like guys and gals that are working there, and a lot of those clinicians are vets, that's one of the advantages of them. But I think that they need to make sure, like, you've got a couple good ones that I know of, like in New York City. There's actually one up here in Syracuse area that's pretty good. But they integrate, they'll bring in alternative medicine things as well, or they'll link up with nonprofits in the area, like a Clear Path for Veterans, or a like another type of, or like Hope for the Warriors, to help them look at an alternative side, where like integrating chiropractic and things along those lines too. You know what I mean? So they're not, as long as you've got people that are open-minded, that's the problem. Is too many clinicians are closed-minded, because this is what we do and this is it.
Right. Can I ask you?
We have all the answers. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you, truthfully, Bennett, do you believe that there's possibly a thin streak of resistance to veteran involvement in other veterans' healthcare from Western trained clinicians? Do you think that, because from what I've seen with some of the stuff, it seems, some of my own experiences, at times there is a dismissiveness of the input of the veteran into the healthcare that they receive.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. 100% agree that it's actually, which is kind of funny. The last episode that we just had, it was me and Mike talking about that very kind of thing, not just with integrating our own healthcare and being a part of what's right for us. You know what I mean? Right. But it was in the more of the business space that, you might have the degree and everything, but you're just a dumb grunt, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I think that there is kind of I'm the doctor, I know what's best for you. And unfortunately, I would agree that is a big part of healthcare, for veterans. And that's one of the things.
I think that attitude is prevalent in all of Western medicine. I think a guy who graduates from medical school, or school of psychiatry or whatever, in the United States or any Western country, is basically told that he's the duty expert, and he's supposed to look at a certain set of circumstances and come up with an answer, and that's the answer.
Oh yeah, don't search the internet for an alternative answer at all, because how many doctors I've had said, stay away from the internet, it's horrible.
Well, and don't listen to the patient's input. The patient's only there to provide you raw data, but it's your responsibility to to hone that data down to what you need as the mental health professional, and you give your diagnosis, and that's the diagnosis. And irrespective of whether or not you know anything else about what's going on in that person's life, aside from the specific reason that they showed up in your office, right? And so I think that's a systemic thing throughout modern Western medicine. I think dealing with the veteran community exacerbates it, because there's already that gap of misunderstanding or lack of,
and frankly, hostility on a lot of people's instances, is that they're already coming into this situation like they're so down and out that they want help, but yet all they've ever come up against is people that don't listen to them. So frankly, one of the things that should happen is that medical school or whatever, like, people, they need to actually have classes on like interacting with people. Like, you're dealing with people now, not cattle. These guys aren't subjects, they're people with names.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a bad patient.
Right.
And that's what you get. You get a lot of doctors, well, you're just a lousy patient.
You're just because
really?
So it's there's no empathy, there's no whatever. They're looking at people as though it's like you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just that whole.
I want to get back to the vet center, because you guys brought up some really good points about the vet centers, and for our audience, obviously, pretty heavily in the veteran community, and a lot of guys that listen to the podcast and gals may need the services of the vet center. So my own experience with that, I went to one for a while, looking for mental health care. I thought I was treated with a great deal of respect when I walked in the door. Everybody there, I felt like they got me, because everybody there that I came in contact with at my vet center was a veteran. Every single one of them. The office manager, scheduler, the guy at the front desk, everybody. And the only reason I don't still go is because the one clinician that I saw, who is a veteran, it's just his own personality. He just wanted to talk about himself. And I'm like, well, that's not working because I need to talk about me, But other than that, it was a great experience. But I'll tell you that a couple of things the vet center has going against it. The one thing it has that's great, and John, you brought this up, was that they are a separate entity. They're part of the VA, but they're not part of the rest of the VA, right? They've got their own separate chain of command, and the vet centers don't talk to VA compensation, and the VA healthcare
which is huge.
Yeah.
And healthcare, the VHA doesn't get involved with them at all, really.
Right. Veterans healthcare doesn't talk to the vet centers and vice versa. So that's a huge thing. It's a draw to get guys in the door, but it can also be a bad thing because, you're talking about the holistic care and the lack of it. How can a guy, let's say the counselor I saw at the vet center, he needs to know what meds I'm on, and maybe I'm not being very forthcoming, and maybe there's a bunch of other things going on in my life, and he wants to see the whole picture, right? It's good that I can say, no, you don't talk to anybody else but me about me. All right, that's good that I have that control. But if I do give him, sign a what do you call it, a waiver or whatever to be able to look at my records and things like that, they ought to be able to share that information back and forth. But here's the thing. I could go in there and tell my doctor and sign a paper saying that, yeah, you can share information about me. They can't talk to each other to save their own life. They can't do it because they don't know how. They're incapable of sharing information cross-agency within the VA. It's freaking stupid. If something that's going on between me and my counselor at the vet center has a bearing on, let's say, a VA compensation case that's being worked through the VA compensation, you know what kind of a nut roll it would be to get them to communicate with one another? No, it's the way it's set up right now is it's fully on me. I am fully and completely responsible to gather up all that information myself from wherever that information resides and hand carry it over to the other part of the VA to do with whatever it needs to be done with.
And part of the reason that is, frankly, is because, well, it's HIPAA. And I'll tell you, man, the hoops that we have to jump through.
I understand HIPAA, but if you sign the form and you're within the same agency, the Veterans Administration, that those different branches of that same agency ought to be able to communicate with one another as long as that piece of paper is in the system. But they don't have a way to put that piece of paper in the system so that everybody can see it.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason they have the vet centers the way they have them. I know. I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, it's a matter of trying to put together that system. And that's what we're kind of, the overarching goal of Warrior Hall is kind of that integrated holistic system.
Yeah.
So
I think obviously from the conversation this few minutes, I think it's pretty apparent there's some pretty significant process improvements that, could get plugged in there, might really be helping some people out. So if, Warrior Hall is going to be a vehicle to do that, then by all means,
Yeah, we'll see.
we need to have Secretary McDonald on the show. Anyway, so I know you got several products on your website. If you want to tell us a little bit about them. And also, I kind of wanted to know what you got planned for the future for Gritty Gear, if you've got anything on the horizon that you can share with us or anything like that.
Yeah, sure. Well, the big push right now is actually the Self-Aid Buddy Aid bag. It's called the Saba bag. It's patent pending with U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And that bag is pretty unique. And I'm glad I came up with it after spending time on a range with a law enforcement officer. We were talking, and he had just gotten some tourniquet training and he was pretty enthusiastic. And he said, hey, the department's issuing us tourniquets, but they're only giving us one, and it's only for me. So even if I show up and somebody else is hurt, I'm not supposed to. And apparently there's there's accountability for, if you were to take an action that was inconsistent with policy, even if it did improve somebody's well-being. So I was just sitting there talking with this guy, and I was like, okay. So the Saba bag, Self-Aid Buddy Aid, I think especially, coming out of the military, you guys, we've all had that class, right? Casualty management, first, don't become a casualty, right? And then secondly, if you're able to, save yourself, don't put your buddy in harm's way if you can take care of yourself. So that bag, I wish you guys actually had them in hand, and then we wouldn't have to be doing this. But So when you look at it from the outside, you'll notice that those two tourniquets are mounted externally, right? If you take a look at those pictures, and it looks like a magazine retention strap, which is holding those in place, which is pretty much what that is. And on the front end of there is actually a pocket. So when you've got that gear, right, on your web belt or whatever it is, what you can actually do is you can have your heads up the whole time, and you'll see medics do this, and they do it all the time, but they put their gloves in the pocket because they don't want to touch somebody, and rightfully so, but they'll have their gloves in their pocket, but then they fumble in their pockets, and then their head's down, right? And now we're not paying attention to what's going on around us. So I'm not sure, what training pipeline you guys have been through and what schools and everything, but, where I was trained, head up, eyes on the objective. And when you're working, even if you're working a weapon system or a medical system or a radio, the workspace is right here in front of your face. And it's the reason why your hands up, your head's up, so that you can keep an eye on what's going on. And medics get hit all the time on scene by cars. Happens to cops too, but these guys get sideswiped by drivers. Either the driver's paying attention to the accident, or the medic is engrossed in a task where he's attempting to maybe recover some material, or who knows what. And there's fatalities, and it's a preventable loss. So one of the things that bag does, and that's part of the reason why there's a patent on it, is because of the functionality of the equipment, right? So what it allows the medic to do is go in that external pocket where the gloves are, doesn't have to dig around, keep direct line of sight on everything that's going on in his immediate environment. And for things that are preventable deaths, like life-threatening extremity hemorrhage, right? Killed more guys in Vietnam than anything else, right? In terms of preventable causes of death. And that's why tourniquet training has become standardized across pretty much every department and every military throughout the world. You need to have a tourniquet and you need to know how to be able to put it on, not just yourself, but your buddy, and you need to be able to execute that task in a timely fashion. So if we run up on a vehicle and there's somebody in there, God forbid, and this just happened down in Brevard County, I think 2014, guy was pulling a U-turn, direct lateral impact. He kind of had his arm out the window. So the guy's got a partial amputation of the left upper extremity, and he's bleeding out all over the place. Well, that's a guy that you can save, right? There's something you can do for him. And the answer in that situation is a tourniquet. So with these kind of bags, now we've got a medic or we've got an LEO that can get to the scene, protect themselves from these bloodborne pathogens, because you don't know who you're working with or where they're coming from or what they've been exposed to. Grab that tourniquet without having to dig in a bag, without having to unzip anything, and just saved himself X number of seconds, which sounds almost insignificant. But those seconds, when we're talking about preventable causes of death and things like massive arterial hemorrhage, that is the time that you need for that intervention to be applied and to get that survivability back up there. And that's exactly what that bag delivers. And that's actually why we're pushing the Sabba bag really hard right now, because it is it's absolutely appropriate. And I just, I'll take it back to the news, but it's good to have those. It's good to have something like that around. I mean, this is not a Band-Aid kit. This is not a first aid kit that you go out and find at a Walgreens or, whatever it is. I mean, this is real stuff, and this is for, and it needs to be. And it's unfortunate. And I'll tell you that it really is. It's unfortunate that we're living in a time and in a place globally where we have to be thinking like, hey, do I have access to a resource to help me out of a bad situation? And that's part of not just your situational awareness piece, but also just the cold, hard reality of the fact that there's a lot of damaged people that, regardless of the means, wish to conduct themselves with malice, and they're doing it. It's unfortunate, but yeah.
So all the bags that you have on your website, you got 3 different ones. There's the blowout kit, there's the Saba bag, and the Boston bag. And so these all come fully equipped. They've got all the stuff in them when you purchase them from your website.
Yep, you're ready to rock, man. You take it out of the box and you're good to go. You just got to get your skills up,
Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
And we're absolutely working on the training side with that. And that's been really important. And if I may, I'd like to really give some acknowledgement to the assault counter tactics team run by Paul Boella down at the Police Hall of Fame range in Titusville, Florida. They've been extremely proactive, very forward-thinking, not just with their defensive tactics training and their awareness, but working with assault counter tactics has been very good for Gritty Gear, very good for the students of both of ACT as well. And, Paul Puella is very highly experienced guy. He, like you, Tim, got a whole lot of jumps. I'm pretty sure he's a free fall instructor for X number of years, So, you guys have some shared history there. And I remember I was like, oh, I'd love to introduce you to this guy back in Vegas. But the idea that, the training piece is there too. So it's not just the equipping, it's the training and working as, having worked as a training guy. And to everybody that's out there doing it, they get my respect because those hours are long. And, on the entrepreneurial side, I'm certainly hoping to see maybe some of my knowledge or some of my influence or some of the collective experience of the Gritty Gear team be imparted and help do some good in the world. But maybe we don't have to be the guy that's right there on the ground putting in a 16-hour range day, So.
Yeah.
So John, I really am glad that you came on. Go ahead and give us your the website again and where we can reach guys from Gritty Gear.
Absolutely. So the website is Gritty, so GRITTYGEAR-medical.com. So grittygear-medical.com. The Facebook is Gritty Gear Medical. You run it through a Google browser, it'll bring up the store. And then there's also Gritty Gears on Instagram as well. And then tie-ins through the website will kind of loop back to Facebook. And if you go through the Facebook channel, you get a direct chance to interact with everybody. Again, Gerard's really spearing the social media piece right now. He's doing a fantastic job. And if, there comes a point in time where we need to start getting people regionally directed, we have in terms of if they want a regional point of contact, then we can definitely facilitate that. But those will be those primary channels to help get everything kind of start herding the cats through, if you will.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, man, we appreciate it. It's great talking to you. And everybody go check out Gritty Gear. Go to iTunes, download this episode, download all our episodes, rate and review the podcast. And Tim, you got anything else?
No, man, I just want to thank John for coming on and sharing about Gritty Gear and what you guys have going on. Really look forward to talking to you again in the future. It'd be nice to have some more of your teammates on the show. And,
that's a show
like
for the future, and I don't mean too far down. It'd be cool to get some more guys on here, just
absolutely
smoking and joking.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start working on that from my end. I'm happy to have them on there. I'd like to just say thanks, guys. I really do hope that we get the chance to pick this back up. It's really nice to be able to kind of touch base with some clear thinking guys that have been through some stuff that are trying to do
like-minded folks, man.
Yeah, like-minded individuals. So I really appreciate it also.
I don't know how clear thinking we are, but
Yeah,
hey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Check us out again, and until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.
Of United States Marine.